All right. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited today to bring my friend Evelyn into our home space to share with you a little bit about her gardening journey and also her journey as a mom and finding ways to make it a nurturing home environment for her that is connected to the earth and connected to the heart. So, Evelyn, welcome. I know you as an online teacher. That's how we met. This is my classroom, but I really, I think it's so neat that we share both the online teaching experience as well as our love for family and the earth. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then we'll move into talking about gardening and family.
Yes, my name's Evelyn. I have a YouTube channel, Evelyn Joy. I teach online, and I'm a mama of 4 little ones. Oh, look, I have a prop. Esther is 6, Deborah's 5, Joshua's 3, and Caleb is 1. So a year ago, pre-pandemic, I was the mom that we had a play day on such and such day, and a certain day of the week we went to the children's museum, we went to the zoo, we went to the park, and then suddenly when the pandemic hit, it was like, okay, we have to shelter in place, we have to stay home. So it's like, I have to make this place that we are the fun place. So, and then at the same time, the grocery stores were empty, and I realized no matter what happens around me, I'm responsible for these little mouths to feed. So gardening was always something that I thought, oh, I'll do that when they're teenagers, when they can help me and stuff. And it suddenly became, well, I guess we're gardening, right? So last year I started with what materials can I get for free or for cheap to get started. So first of all, I already had an old kiddie pool with holes in it. So I drilled some holes in it and I filled it with soil, and I planted plants in that. And I was able to get some railroad ties for free through Facebook Marketplace. I just had to go pick it up. And when I went to pick it up, they were disappointed that I couldn't bring all of it. I'm like, I just have a van, I don't have a truck. So they said, tell us where you live and we'll bring the rest of them. So I was able to make 2 beds for free out of that. Someone else had cinder blocks for free, so I built a bed out of cinder blocks. So last year I was sort of doubtful and I was like, I'm just gonna put some seeds in some soil and see what happens. And I started off with no knowledge of gardening, so I just didn't even think about spacing out the seeds or anything. I was just like, oh, Dollar Tree packet of seeds, dump it in some soil, and it grew. But some of that was not necessarily transferable to outside, but it was good for the kids to see how plants grow and stuff. So I did get some starter plants from like Ace Hardware and stuff. I got some free buckets that I drilled holes in, and I bought some 6-foot bamboo poles. So I grew some tomatoes and some peppers and some watermelon and some cantaloupe and some strawberries and some blackberry plants, and some of my plants didn't make it, and a lot of them did much better than I expected. And then this year I've actually been investing a little bit in building actual structures that I actually pay for the wood, but building it myself with a drill and stuff, and getting stepping stones and placing them, and I'm built like an arch and stuff, and I'm planning on growing green beans and pinto beans and black beans, and I like marigolds because they're great for the garden, and just planning on a lot more strawberries and trying blueberries, and just basically doing all the ones that I did before, but adding to it like new plants.
You are so incredibly resourceful. I mean, that being a mom of 4 and doing everything that you're doing in the garden, that is just so freaking amazing, right? Like, so when you decided to do that, how did it affect your feeling about what was happening with COVID and the potential shortage of food? Because we didn't know, a year ago now in March, we were seeing empty shelves of things. And as a mom, that can be scary to say, will I have enough food to feed myself? So what did it do for your sense of self-esteem and the sense of being able to provide for your family?
Well, I was surprised too that the reason I've continued with it is maybe it sounds sort of selfless when you say, oh, you're doing all this work and you have these 4 kids. It's a little bit selfish too, because I discovered that it's therapeutic.
Yes.
To just, even though I'm in the middle of the city, I'm getting connected with nature in a way that I haven't before. And so I also realized that you don't have to have necessarily a green thumb. There's not really such thing as a black thumb. Some of these plants, they just want to grow. they just want some soil, they just want some sunlight and some rain, and then they go, and it's amazing, and I feel like plants speak sign language. So they speak to us. They wilt a little bit like, oh, I'm not getting enough water. I'm getting too much sun. Or they communicate with us with the way that they are like, falling off the trellis. I need tied up, or just full of tomatoes, like prune these off of me, like, so I can grow some more, I felt like the plants kind of talk to me like, oh, I'm helping my little plant friend,
Well, and I think plants do. I think that there's little plant spirits that have their own unique needs. And if we can listen,
Mm-hmm.
if we can listen to what the earth is telling us, then we're part of that co-creation.
Yeah.
It's not that we're separate from this ongoing sense of creation that is part of the universe unfolding itself. So that's what I think is so exciting. And I'm glad you found a way for it to be like grounding and centering for yourself, because as moms, we can get overwhelmed, so to have a place that you can go to that is your sanctuary, and yet at the same time providing for your kids and not waiting for it to be perfect, like showing them that I have a passion, I have an interest, we're going to go for it, and we can learn along the way. Like that life lesson for your kids, that they don't have to wait till they're the expert. It's like a whole different lesson that you're teaching your kids, right? It's that let's learn as we go. That's what life is. And at the same time, I'm imagining that your kids are learning about how food it comes into the world in a real hands-on way, because I think when you live in the city, it's so easy to say, well, it comes from the store. Well, actually, food doesn't come from a store. It comes from the earth, and so you're giving them that experience. That's so cool. I'm going to share the screen for a moment because I want you to show us some of the things that, okay, now how's this going to work? Okay, good. So let's look at some of what you were talking about here. I think, is this?
Yes, this is my kiddie pool raised bed. I got my kids a new kiddie pool and used their old one. So I'm going to be putting more soil in this. This is what it looks like right now. Last year, I grew a bunch of different squash plants in here. And I also discovered that these squash plants probably would have produced more and grown much further if they hadn't been inhibited, their roots hadn't been inhibited. So this year when I grow zucchini, it's going to be in the ground rather than in here. So for a kiddie pool like this, in containers, you can definitely container garden. Make sure you drill holes in the bottom. So for container gardening, when it has shallow roots like this, it would be great to have maybe radishes or strawberries or lettuce, but these are things I've had to learn, so I was like, this is going to be where I have all my squash, but my squash would have grown much further, I think, if their roots hadn't been contained, but I am going to use that for, I think, lettuce this year, lettuce and spinach, I believe.
So what are we looking at here?
So I'm building this right now. This is literally, I just started laying these down today. So I put down cardboard first because last year I set down stepping stones and grass grew in between them. So I'm putting, I'll put cardboard down because it's free. It's a free material you can use. I put cardboard down before I put the stepping stones down so that the grass doesn't grow in between the stepping stones. And these little boxes I've been building, I'm planning on growing blueberry bushes in them. So I'm going to be spacing them out. Now, blueberry bushes are a little bit complicated because they like acidic soil. So you have to buy them special soil for them. And also, in order to cross-pollinate, you need a couple different types of blueberry plants, and they take a couple years to establish. But the cool thing about blueberry plants is that my dad has 20-year-old blueberry plants, so a lot of the plants I'm growing, they're gonna die and I'll have to replant plants next year, right? But the blueberry plants and the blackberry plant and the strawberries and stuff, berries basically, they live longer, right? They're a bit more of a time commitment as far as establishing them, but they will they're more of a long term. And that's something I have a good memory of. I'm from Kansas, but my dad and stepmom lived in Arkansas. We would visit them for a month every summer, and they lived sort of out in the country, and they grew some of their own plants and had chickens and stuff. And my favorite plant was the blueberry plants, to go out and pick blueberries and eat them fresh off the vine. And I want my kids to have experiences like that,
That's awesome. We moved to this location 15 years ago. So it's a farm out in the country, and we planted some blackberry plants at that time. And Gabriel was 7. And as he got, it took a couple of years, as you mentioned. At first there would just be a few berries, and the next year more. And then it was like, now we're cutting back the blueberry because it's taking over the area. But it's so special. And, he'd bring in a bowl and say, is this enough for a blackberry pie? And it's like, yes. So it's just so neat when, as a child, I could see his excitement about going into the garden and picking it and eating it, and the sense of pride that a child can feel and being part of that whole process. And as a mom, it's like, he's learning where food comes from. This is so important. Yeah. So going back to these boxes, so will the roots be able to go down far enough for blueberries? I've not planted blueberries.
Yes, I'm going to cut where the plant's going to be. I'm not going to have the cardboard right there, but it's there for right now while I'm setting down the stepping stones. I'm going to, when I have the actual blueberry plants, I'm going to cut the cardboard and dig down deeper. But I'm also going to be adding like acidic soil in there, find out all the good nutrients that they need. So yeah.
So I'm not sure which order to go here, but we're just.
There's no particular order. So this is like you can see on the left-hand side, that's my cinder blocks. That's where I have a blackberry plant growing there. These buckets that you see, I got the buckets for free through Facebook Marketplace, drilled holes in them, and I grew tomatoes in them last year. And once again, I had tomatoes in the ground and tomatoes in the container, and I noticed that the tomatoes in the ground, the leaves were more full and the tomatoes were bigger, and the tomatoes in the containers were like little cherry tomatoes. We got a lot of them. My kids really loved that. But this year, I'm still contemplating what I want to grow in the buckets. I think I'll probably do carrots or something. So it's interesting because some plants need more space for their roots. And if they don't have as much space, they just produce less. And they show you that with like the size of their leaves and the size of their produce. And it's interesting. So here you can see the railroad ties that I got for free last year. And I made 2 beds there. I hired a gentleman from Facebook Marketplace that was saying he would build raised beds for us. And so I have 2 wooden raised beds you can see there. But I paid pretty good price because I didn't have the means to go to the store, buy wood. I didn't have the drill. I didn't have the saw. I didn't have all the stuff to build my own. So I hired someone that had an okay price. But now this year, I have the van, I have the saw, I have the drill. I'm making it.
Girl.
So this year, I found good deals for wood, and I built several beds for the price that I paid for 2 last year.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and I've got some baby gates that I got for $5 on Facebook Marketplace, and I use them as trellises. And this year I added actual trellises to the tops of them using zip ties and stuff like that. So here on the left-hand side, I just built this. We have a pet rabbit, and he, he has a large cage inside. But when we're outside and the weather's nice, it's nice for him to be able to run around. But we have, we don't want him to get out of the fence and stuff, and we don't want to lose him or have a stray dog get in and get him or something. So I built this
rabbit run
around area 6x6, and I'm going to be growing some plants for him to nibble on in there too. So I'm going to have like some basil plants, and
they'll go quickly.
well, I'm planning on growing them big and then putting them in there, and then he can nibble on them. So that he's not just nibbling on starter plants. But yeah.
I was thinking about the pails that you had, just hopping back there for a moment.
Yeah.
How cool it would be if each of your children could like have their own pail.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool for them to be able to feel like this is the one that they're watering and taking care of?
That's what last year we did that with marigolds. They had their own container of marigolds, and then finally we transplanted it. So this is my new project. So this is my this year I built these raised beds.
So you built these with your own saw and hammer and wood, and good for you.
I built them inside my house when there was snow on the ground outside, because I'm like itching to garden and I can't do it. So I'm going to build inside, while I can. And then when the weather was nice, I was building the arches, because last year there were some vegetables that I wanted to grow that I couldn't grow because I didn't have a trellis. And so this year, like pole beans, green beans, stuff like that, black beans, pinto beans. So this year I said, well, I want to build a nice big trellis so that I can grow anything I want to. So first I built one, and then I just decided to build another. So
like, why not? Right? It's almost a little addictive to realize that, oh my gosh, this is going to produce this much. And if I do another, it's going to produce this much. And it's so fun. So you obviously have a lot of garden space here, right? And so what are your plans for harvesting? What are your plans for, you have a big family too. I'm not sure if have I done all of this? Yeah, I think we.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because I built some trellises I didn't talk about yet. But yeah. Okay. Do you want to go back to that picture that has we can look at any picture you want to, but yeah. So you see those trellises that are going like this?
Yes.
The reason I built those, one of them I built out of 2 baby gates. One of them I built out of some extra fencing material and some poles that I had. But the reason I built them is because, as I discovered last year, when you grow zucchini or watermelon or cantaloupe, it just vines everywhere.
Yes.
But the vines have these little, there's probably a technical gardening name for it that I don't know yet, but they have like little grabber vines that they grab onto things, and they love climbing on things. And so if you have a trellis for them, even a short one, which with melons and zucchini, it's almost nicer to have it a little bit closer to the ground so that if I want to support it with a cinder block or something, I can. But that way, when you grow vertically, you can make the most of your space. So last year I began to learn how to garden. This year I'm learning how to garden vertically, because that way I can make more of my space, Yeah. And there's some people that use pantyhose or plastic bags for tying, their melons to the trellis or whatever. So I'm going to learn about all that this year. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, is there another photo here that I haven't clicked on? I want to show some of
the kids. Yeah.
So like, this is obviously last year, right?
Yes.
Because I was going to say, you're taking up so much of your yard with your garden, but there's still need for the kids to have play space. But the play space can also be incorporated into the garden space.
Well, and I just built my kids in a swing set. They have a slide. Our yard continues further on. It's a very big yard to run around it.
That's
But
awesome.
I'm just taking up the space where the sun hits it. The rest of it's very shaded, which is nice to play in the summer. But also something I discovered is I built my kids, swing and porch swing and slide. I'm like, you go over in your area and I'm going to garden. And they just want me to spray them with the hose and they want to be over with me doing whatever mama's doing. So if I'm digging in the dirt, they want to play with the worms. If I'm watering the garden, they want to water it too. They want me to spray them. They want, so even when I try to be like, you guys go over there and, catch some lightning bugs or something, and they want to do what mama's doing. So
exactly. That's what I found with Gabriel. I had little dump trucks and he would bring over the soil to dump into the hole that I dug, or he had the tiny little dump truck with the seeds and he would spread them into the trench, or, he wanted to be a part of that, to be an integral part of whatever I'm doing. And you're right. It's the biggest flattery, but they want to do what mom's doing, so awesome.
The awesome thing about it is these are skills that I didn't learn as a child that I'm learning as an adult, but they're learning from childhood how to cook, how to cook, how to sew, how to garden, all the things. And so, and also it's good for eating healthy. For example, I'm growing green beans partly to encourage Deborah to like green beans.
Right. Okay, that's a really good point. So
she grows it herself and picks it herself. She has more ownership over it and it's not a gross thing on her plate anymore,
Right. So if your kids are finicky, help them grow what it is and then be like, oh, this is the green bean I grew. It tastes so much better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That's another thing I realized. Last year, I unexpectedly grew food. I tried to grow food and I had zero expectations. And what we're looking at right now, looking at this picture, I look at the plants and I think about how little I knew about gardening and how surprised I was by the garden last year. So on the right hand side, those are eggplant plants. I got them for 25 cents on sale, little starter plants at Ace Hardware. They looked like they were going to die. They were eaten up by bugs. They were 25 cents. So I was like, I can put it in some dirt and give it some water, see what happens. And then I grew all these eggplants and I'm like, we don't even like eggplant. What do I do with all this? I didn't expect to grow like 20 eggplants. And they ended up going to waste because time got away from me. I was planning on learning to cook them and they ended up going to waste. But this year I have more of a plan to not do that, And I got one cantaloupe starter plant from Ace Hardware for like $1.25. And it took up the whole entire area space. It went everywhere and it grew so many cantaloupes and they were so sweet and so juicy. We gave them away to friends as well. And it was just like so cool and then each cantaloupe has so many seeds you can save inside of it. And then I see right behind Joshy, my son, I see the pepper plants that sometimes we didn't even think, from looking at the plant, you would think, oh, there's not a pepper on it. And then you lift a leaf and there's like huge bell peppers on there. We didn't even know was there. And so my kids would pull their own bell pepper and, eat it fresh. And I see my potato plants that have so much grass growing in them. And the potato plants didn't mind. I accidentally grew, I tried to grow a few, food items, and I accidentally grew like a food jungle last year. And the weeds just got away from me. But we dug up a lot of potatoes. It was a lot of fun. So, yeah.
And I just love this picture. Like they're just sitting there. They're enjoying, just being part of it. How rich of an experience. And right before we started, we talked about what it means to be a homemaker, right? And I think especially as women, but as parents, we want to create that nest for our families, that place that is nurturing, where our children feel connected to the vital life source that they come from. And, sometimes we can just say, oh, I'm just a homemaker. But really, if you pay attention to what that means, it's about giving life to the word home and the place that we feel rooted and grounded. So can you share with me the Spanish translation of that and tell me what it means?
And I wanted to say too, not every house is a home. And the house I grew up in my own bedroom, I turned it into my own little sanctuary. Like I, painted a mural on the wall and stuff, but there was a lot of, contention and yelling and my mom went through a lot of different marriages during my childhood. And so, my house growing up wasn't a home. So as an adult, homemaker has even so much more, a lot of times the parents, we set the tone of what our home's going to be like. If it's going to be a home, if it's a place that you escape to or escape from, and, especially with the pandemic, I don't want my kids to feel depressed because we can't go all the fun places. So I want to make this the fun place. I don't want my kids not to have food. So I'm going to grow some food. There's so many things going on in the world I don't have control over, but I can learn how to garden. That's something I can have some control over, and I was amazed too. You can just put 5 little watermelon seeds in the ground and make so many watermelons, each watermelon has so many seeds in it.
So then there'll be more and more.
Yeah. But like you were saying, the word in Spanish for homemaker, the mother of the house is la alma de la casa. That's the soul of the house. So it really, a lot of times we say, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy or whatever. We have expressions like that, like where the mom, her attitude kind of sets the tone. And I'm not saying I do that right, but I'm learning every day. Right. But yeah, I think it's a tremendous privilege and obligation to be a homemaker. And so I don't know, I'm enjoying learning how to garden, and my kids are learning a
so
lot.
if you were to give advice to someone, say, okay, I've always wanted to garden, but I've not known where to begin, what are like just 2 or 3 tips you would say for beginning?
I would say, in the springtime, go to Dollar Tree. They have some seeds for cheap, and get some soil and some containers and start with that. Try growing something, and also find out where you live, like your growing zone. I live in Kansas, so the plants I've listed are the plants that grow well in my state. And also something I didn't even realize last year, but the backs of the seed packets give you advice.
Isn't that amazing that they would offer to do that?
So that I didn't even look. I didn't even read it last year. But they tell you how much to space out the seeds. They tell you what temperature that plant likes. For example, last year, the reason cauliflower didn't grow well for me in the middle of the summer is because cauliflower is a cold weather plant. It wasn't because cauliflower won't grow well. It was because it's the wrong time of year to grow it, right? And so it's important to learn and understand the needs of the plant. And also on YouTube, say you want to grow tomatoes. I would say tomatoes is a good plant to start off with, because tomatoes grow so easily and it's so satisfying to grow some tomatoes, right? But just look up some YouTube videos by Evelyn Joy. And yeah, as soon as I built this trellis, my kids are like, it's a tent, and they go inside and I could feel guilty for taking up some of the yard for gardening, but that could be their play space, but they see it as it's still my play space, right?
It's my play space. Yeah, exactly. And I think what you have shown us is don't wait till you know it all. Just begin and learn as you begin. Let it be an ongoing experience of learning. This is so great. This is so great.
My husband's a little bit worried about and we just built this swing set. So yeah, my husband's a little worried that because we had one gardener snake and we had a lot of bumblebees last year, because as you connect to nature, nature just comes to you and finds you. But
you become a magnet.
What?
You become a magnet for life because it's there and it creates its own ecosystem.
Well, and then this year, even at Dollar Tree, I've bought 4 hummingbird feeders, and I'm going to have them in my garden. So I'm learning to be next to nature and be okay. It's okay if there's bumblebees in my garden. They're good for the garden. But like I teach my kids, you just don't want the bumblebees on your skin, just make sure they're over there. You watch them, but you don't want to go try to touch them, or if we see a gardener snakes, don't actually hurt you. But, as you can see, my kids have boots. They have rubber boots now that are great for playing out in the garden in. And, if we see a snake, hopefully they stay away from us. But yeah.
Well, and as a kid, I loved picking up the garter snakes. And
really?
Garter snakes are, they're harmless. So you could pick them up right behind the head and let it twirl around your arm and show the kids that, nature's not something to fear. This is an amazing animal. Now, I don't know if you have poisonous snakes in your area too.
We've had them in our yard too. So
okay, then you don't want to encourage them to pick up snakes.
Yeah. But we do play with worms that way.
Okay,
when I was digging for potatoes, they were so excited. So we had a bucket to put the potatoes in and a bucket to put the worms in, and the kids were playing with the worms.
Yeah, and we homeschooled Gabriel, and so it's all part of the learning process, right? Like, so why are the worms there, and what happens? It becomes the reason to learn the next thing, right? The learning just happens organically when you're immersed into nature, immersed into living your life. And it becomes such a rich way to discover something that's so different than just looking at a textbook or being told about it.
And Esther, she's my 6-year-old. So she's the one. Esther's 6, Deborah's 5. So they're the ones that ask the most questions about gardening. So they'll ask questions that I don't always know the answer to, but we have Google, we can look it up, right? So they'll ask me, they'll see a bug in the garden and they know some bugs are good for the garden and some bugs are bad for the garden, right? So they'll ask me, are dragonflies good for the garden? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure. Are ladybugs good for the garden? Like, how about mosquitoes? Like, I don't like mosquitoes, but they know that worms and bumblebees and butterflies are all good for the garden. And it would be cool to have hummingbirds this year. We'll see. A friend of mine who lives in my city, she has hummingbird feeders that are just, I can't believe that Dollar Tree sells hummingbird feeders for $1. So I got 4 of them.
That's great. The one thing I would say, and you probably noticed that the hummingbird feeders are red. Mm-hmm. Right? Because red is one of those colors. So if you plant flowers that are red or purple, they'll attract to that as well. Yeah. And the one thing that some people think they have to do is color the water red, and don't, because that food coloring isn't great for the birds. But some people do that. And I really try to discourage that, because that's just an added dye that's not part of their natural diet.
Yeah, that's true. It's just like sugar water you put in there, right?
Yeah. You just dissolve, heat the water, dissolve it. Once it's cool, put it in, and they're good. Now you want to clean out the little holes that are in the hummingbird feeder regular, so that you don't want mold growing in there. You don't want it to get, because that creates a toxic environment if it's not cleaned out regularly.
Yeah. 1 second. I took my daughters to Dollar Tree today, and actually I'm going to have them paint a couple little pods.
Awesome.
And then these are the little hummingbird feeders that when in Arkansas, when we would visit our dad, they had a hummingbird feeder just like this right outside of their kitchen window. So we would be eating breakfast or lunch, and we would be watching the hummingbirds body slamming each other. But yeah, so
Awesome.
yeah.
So, and do you plan on canning this year or preserving any excess harvest?
Mm-hmm. One moment. Hi, Deborah. Do you want to say hi?
Hi, Deborah.
Deborah, this is my friend Mary.
Hi, Deborah. It's so nice to meet you. We're looking at a photo of your backyard. Hi there.
Hi.
Your mommy's growing a big garden.
Do you like to garden?
Yeah.
What do you like to do in the garden?
I love Mommy, guess what?
What do you want to grow this year?
Carrot.
Carrots. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Are carrots your favorite vegetable?
And Mommy.
Her favorite vegetable is spinach. Do you want to grow some spinach this year? She likes spinach
I
with
want
ranch.
to
She likes to eat it fresh. You want to paint? We're actually not going to paint this very moment, sweetheart. But what you can paint, do you want to paint on this?
Yeah. I want to paint on that.
All right.
Yeah.
It's not fair. I've got 2 of them. That is fair.
Can I paint the heart?
Sure. I guess so.
Awesome. And I know I've taken a lot of your time already, Evelyn. This has been so wonderful. And it's so great to actually meet your daughters as well.
Yeah.
Now we can.
This is who you're doing all this for, right?
Yeah.
I want. Oh, Deborah, you can't make.
Esther, do you want to say hi to my friend Mary?
Hi, Esther.
Esther,
Hi,
what are you
Esther.
excited to grow this year?
Strawberries.
Strawberries.
Now, is it Esther's birthday?
No,
Deborah, I don't like it when you.
they
mix
got
the
to go to
colors.
Dollar Tree today and pick out a
Deborah,
few
I don't
things
like it when
for
you mix the
as a
colors.
prize for doing good.
Awesome.
Of the inside of
Really,
it.
really cool. Well, I am going to let you
All
tend
right.
to your family. Thank you.
Spanish class in 18 minutes, but yeah.
Thank you. I've taken much more of your time than I thought. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And have fun in your garden.